we will actually remove the air conditioning, we would move the equipment out and obviously provide some kind of natural cooling for the electronics to sustain. Happy to report that the kind of reductions which we have seen on consumption, I think I can throw some numbers here, but it's actually mind-boggling numbers which we've managed to retire almost 30,000 air conditioners out of the system as well. Obviously, this has been a very, very joint initiative with other industry stalwarts as well, looking at we should not be damaging the equipment while in our quest to reduce energy, all that, etc. So always been a trade-off between energy and uptime, which means if you start to remove energy from the equation, your uptime, equipment uptime starts to go down. I think we actually changed the equation this time as energy reduction happened at the not at the cost of uptime, but on the other side as well, which means we are sitting with one of the best ever uptimes of our equipment. 99.98% uptime is what we give across the country to our customers as well. So there is a lot that can be done. I can within this breath itself, I can speak of some of the renewable energy projects as well, which we have undertaken as well. Happy to inform you that this conversion project has been selected this year as well for GSMA Green Award as well. I think in a couple of weeks we'll be there to see whether we win this year as well. But the kind of scale which we have demonstrated on this, no other company in the world has probably seen those scales as well.
All mobile telephony companies are sharing your infrastructure.
So the way, sorry, the question here is all mobile telecom companies are sharing our infrastructure. So I think few words on this industry itself, and this question comes to me from various different angles as well. What industry are you in? So we are in the business of space, power and tower. And each one of our operators are actually our customers. So I would say there is no operator who doesn't sit with as a customer with Indus. So So if you're talking of last mile connectivity, I think that this is a relevant discussion from a network perspective, from a tower industry perspective. We provide our customers space, power and tower, and the relevance here is of power.
So we will take this question. Certainly, we'll have enough time later on during the break. But let's yeah. So I think Bimal, it's something amazing you mentioned that. 30% or 30,000 ACs just by addressing and doing a little paradigm shift, that do you need an AC? I think it's an amazing story of innovation and thinking. Let me come to Dinesh. Dinesh, how you articulated the 4 problems. What do you think are the solutions? What I mean, as a country, we have a huge demand-supply gap. We have 30% T&D losses. We have reach problem, and the other things you articulate. What is the solution?
Yeah, thanks.
And what is the role of telecom?
Yeah, I want to kind of pick up from where Mr. Dayal, kind of closed. To be able to produce your own energy at a remote location is one of the best ways you can help your utility company. You could do it with diesel, you could do it with solar, you could do it with biogas, you could do it with whatever else. But basically what you have done is you have provided the capability of power supply at a location where the utility wasn't able to do so. Now the utility essentially now identifies you as a partner, not as a customer anymore, right? So let's say as a utility, I'm able to supply power to the tower, but not for that many hours a day or for that particular load. But they, on the other hand, have made arrangements to be able to supplement what I can provide and get the job done. They may even be able to exceed the requirement. Now that helps me even more, because if I can build systems that can intelligently figure out when I have a little surplus on a site and extract that surplus and give it to another site that has less, I have kind of solved the problem for another site as well. Now all this can only happen when there's communication and control, like I said earlier, a lot of data flowing. And if the entity happens to be a piece of telecom infrastructure, I won't go into the detail of what the business models are, then there's a good chance there's going to be connectivity also in that area, which I'll be able to utilize to do that. So I can create a virtual utility using surplus power at certain times within a virtual network to supply it to areas where there's a dearth. So this is basically the concept of distributed generation. So it says that within the distribution network, you can put up small generation points. I won't say diesel is all that bad as it may sound, given the grid mix at a certain area and given that how far the diesel has traveled on a truck from where it was refined, it might actually be greener than using the grid power.
True.
In some cases.
True.
You would have found that when you do your carbon calculations.
Absolutely.
So being able to know which sites those are, where that is a key consideration. So having that data. So you have master data of places where generation is happening, whether that generation is green, how is it in relation to other locations. You have master data about how your network is sized. So if there's 200 megawatt needed at the end of that room, and I have capability to send only 100 megawatt down this line, then I really can't solve the problem for everybody there. So there's supposed to be somebody there who can help me at the end. For example, partners like a tower company that is generating some power. So those are the concepts of distributed generation, where they essentially solve the problem of A, generation or production, and B, a capacity. They may not necessarily solve the penetration problem completely, because there is essentially a need of a small distribution network to be able to take from surplus to shortage sites. Those are called islanded grids or microgrids, and those are another way of solving the problem. So they cannot exist again without communication and control. So we use the partnership of customers, if you may, convert them into partners as they generate their own power. You use the capabilities of the industries that are in that area that are using a power, for example, telecom, and then you try and solve the problem. And again, I want to reiterate the fact, this kind of command and control or data transfer or analytics is not your WhatsApp, Google kind of thing. It's what we call utility grade. You can't go wrong here. You can't decide to reroute power from site A to site B without knowing exactly whether that's a hospital or whether there's people on life support there. So let's say a tree falls somewhere and you need to know what's the action to be taken. What should your automated system do? Should it turn the Indus tower down and transfer all the electricity board power to whichever site was affected? You need to make that decision on the fly. And I don't know, many of you at the back are quite young, so a couple of decades ago there was a movie, The Terminator, and I think there have been sequels, so maybe you would have seen some of the sequels. So there was this concept of Skynet, where there is a system that has taken control of weapon systems. Skynet actually exists in the utility industry. Okay, so there are utility companies in Europe that have a virtual view of their entire network, have little bots running all over, looking at network nodes at different points in time, making decisions on whether it's cheaper to send power down one line or the other, making decisions on whether it's greener sending power one line or the other, making decisions on whether to evacuate power from a supplier or tell them to turn off their generation and use the grid power, all automated, and even have the capability of doing that during catastrophes. So if there's a flood or there's a major power outage, it will be able to make decisions even in that area. And all that is supported by strong telecom networks, in many cases dedicated. But we want to move away from that. We want to move away from having to provide a dedicated telecom network for industrial purposes. I think the challenge to the telecom industry is, can you provide utility grade communications or command and control using multiple levels of redundancy. For example, in smart metering in the US, I had a client where you put a SIM card in one of the meters to be able to communicate, and it didn't care whether it was on T-Mobile or whether it was on AT&T, and if it couldn't find one of the three that you had already subscribed to, it would switch over to some satellite communication. But it did the job because we couldn't afford to have it not do the job. So maybe those are the areas where you could build IPR, to provide a very highly reliable, highly redundant solution at low cost, of course, and at low power, because then if you're using those, like you said, 3G is really more power intensive than anything else. If you're doing that, look at compression technologies, compression techniques to be able to send large amounts of data. What we call the big data challenge, and solve problems in smaller pieces before they reach the end. There are specific algorithms in the utility industry that you could want to look at and see how communications, telecom can solve some of those problems. But yeah, so these are the areas where we can look for solutions, especially from telecom.
Thanks a lot, Dinesh. Abhay, I come back to you, and as a solutions provider, what do you see some of the things happening in India in addressing this challenge?
Yeah, so definitely I think some of the things that have started is, as I mentioned, that some of the old infrastructure is now getting replaced by the meters who can basically provide the data. So you are able to monitor your energy, and nobody needs to run after the locations. So there is a lot of wireless thing being initiated across India, whereby even the reading of the meters can happen over
it's already happening in Maharashtra.
No, overall there are some pockets actually, not in Maharashtra, but at least in other states like Karnataka, they have started to think and deploy some as a pilot projects where they can measure at least the energy consumption remotely and see what is the demand currently happening. So that is one thing that is happening, and what I think more needs to happen is in terms of the smart grid area. That is something I see that it's not really picking up, and some of the things that are required, like the distributed generation, I think there is a lot of opportunity, both from the policy perspective, government policy perspective, as well as the overall infrastructure perspective. I think that is something that has just, people have just started thinking about how we can do that, but there is a lot to happen in that area.
Excellent. Parag, you mentioned that you have a global M2M responsibility in Tech Mahindra. In your role, have you seen some outstanding trends globally in this, the role of telecom and the utilities and the energy sector?
Yeah, so I think I'll kind of key off of Abhay's discussion on this part as well. So I'm thinking, I don't know if it's necessarily mind-boggling or earth-shattering to some extent, but as Abhay mentioned, telecoms can become co-generation kind of or can run into this power generation mix. Similarly, there's the other trend that I've seen in some cases, which is called power line communication, where people are actually using the electric wires, in fact, to communicate on data on, basically, right? So that's one of the trends, and I think that's in some cases they've seen some good success. In other cases, I've seen a lot of examples where they've dismantled some the infrastructure to do that for various reasons, right? Reliability, carrier, utility grade, you call, I think telecom speak is carrier grade kind of thing, right? So it's not carrier grade, so to speak, data communications, but it's, in my mind, the way to look at it is not so much whether power line has been successful or not. It's more like what is it that will take this data from point A to point B, and what's the best way to do it in a given environment. And for telecom guys, I wouldn't be surprised if many of you and many of the existing telecom professionals actually move from a telco, quote unquote company, to a utility company just to design this network kind of situation. So while it's not earth-shattering, I think we have to always remember, competition can come from anywhere. Who would have known, for example, the airline industry would suffer from internet, right? Business travel was reduced almost 50% at one point just because you could do telepresence and those types of things. So you should always be aware of where the competition is coming from. And I think, a lot of these new technologies, including power line communication, whether it's a failure now or not, will come up and become a big competitor to this stuff. So this is a global trend. I think there are a few examples of this happening in India as well, right? IIT, maybe you guys have tried some of this as well, right? So Wipro, I know Wipro has been involved in some power line communication technologies as well. So I think that's where I think some of this work will go.
Right, great. And in terms of any of the large telcos, have you seen any significant involvement in the energy sector globally?
To be honest, not so much. Active power generation wise, not so much, or even distribution wise, not so much. But certainly, everybody wants to cut down their power bills. And so, the trend is more on the saving side than on the generation side. So I'm sure there is a lot of innovation going on both sides, but it's just not that evident to me at the moment.
I come back to you, Bimal, and the interesting issue is that you have 130,000 sort of towers, and they need power. And there is a hidden energy industry within the tower industry. Do you think, what I understand is Voda in Africa and other places are setting up their own green power stations to generate power and then supply to the villages and so on. Do you think you would be looking at that model, and do you think it's exciting for India to look at this?
So let me first, pick it up from here. I think your question which you asked and Parag actually touched upon it. I think carriers will make lots of money carrying this data back and forth as well. Yes. So there is a huge opportunity for telcos to participate in the future or what they call the smart grids as well. And there is some data which actually sits globally as well, how much money these guys are going to make. Just by participating, and I'm not an expert here whether they'll be able to build the so-called utility grade pipes or not. So coming to this green discussion and Indus's efforts, whether we probably explored things like those or not. So let me first give you some kind of stipulation which we sit with from the government as an industry, and that should show you the kind of investments that would go in next couple of years. It's a stipulation from the government that 50% of all rural sites should be green by next year. 20% of rural sites should be green by next year.
Next year means 2015.
And the next stipulation is it goes up to 75 and 33% as well. Of course, there are various definitions around green as well. What is termed as green, what is termed as renewable, etc., etc. So all that is being played out as well, and as a responsible industry, we are gearing up to meet those demands as well. Now, I would also give one data point and substantiate what myth we sit with as well. EB, for example, I think in India is heavily coal generated, and EB pollution or carbon footprint for 1 kilowatt hour of EB is 0.82 or 83 kgs of carbon generation. And if you actually have an efficient DG generator, it is lower. The equivalent number here is 0.56, 0.57. Even if you go to 0.6 or 0.7 as well, you are not reaching the figure of 0.83, which let's say our EB sits with as well. So I think there is a lot of I would say misnomer around this green concept, and I very easily simplify it for myself that you need to reduce your energy consumption, full stop. So coming to your discussion around this green and whether Indus is exploring, we are exploring all possibilities, all possibilities of participating in this green revolution directly or indirectly. We had looked at solar farms as well. We had looked at trying to set up a model. Now, we as an industry, we said we are not the ones who could generate it efficiently because this is not our core competence. Can we outsource it? Because I think it's great to outsource, right? So what we said was, can we seed an industry and bring up an industry which is microgrids, or call it whatever, wherein RESCO, which is Renewable Energy Services Company, comes into play. They provide us power, even if it is costlier, we are willing to buy. So that model also was floated. Biomass went into such a model as well, but we are not seeing scaling up of this model at all. So just to summarize, a lot has been done. However, scaling up has not happened. Our intentions are to seed any and every effort in this area because it's the responsible thing to do as well. One last comment here, any and every technology, and maybe I'm repeating here for benefit of all, even if whoever forces you to use this technology, unless it adds value and it makes business sense, it is not going to survive. And I can give you examples over and over around, if you add value, the technology will be successful. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So now I will request each of you, starting with Parag, to sort of any last thoughts or any two things which the students and the industry can focus on.
So remain open to challenges and competition. Think of competition could come from anywhere, so keep a big eye on that. Wherever you are, make sure you switch the light off when you leave.
Thank you.
So here, I think when I look back this at the industry, 15, 16, 17 years, we've seen cellular go from point A to point B. It is, I think the joke around is God gave oxygen and we gave coverage to everyone, and which is ubiquitous, etc., etc. A lot has been done on a coverage front as well. But if you start to look at what needs to be done, it is far more than what has been done. Call it data, call it applications, call it devices, call it power as well. Hence, I think that it's endless what we can actually do within the realm of this industry as well. So I think more and more industries would evolve through this enablement of ICT technologies as well, and hence I think I remain a big optimist around how we, let's say in the industry or in and around industry, can change the way we live absolutely positively. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I like the opportunity of the last 2 points always. So I'm going to pick a little from the question that was offered to Parag and also what Abhay had said. So what are telecom companies doing in this area? I have an example from the UK. So UK is rolling out 50 million smart meters over the next 6 or 7 years.
Incidentally, the global demand for smart meters will be around 1.5 billion by 2020.
So you can just see the scale. Now what's happened in the past is that whenever you roll out smart meters, a utility company calls few key people into the room. The meter supplier, the IT or application integrator, and the telecoms provider. Now what's different in the UK is it's not happened this way. The government has said that I will contract out all communications, and the utilities have to use that communication system. So there are companies, Telefonica and Arquiva, that have won these contracts, and they are acting as the nation's communication provider for smart meter. They are not sitting with the utilities trying to give them the best offer. They've been contracted by the government. So take a look at that model and see how that might apply to India, whether you can, make a model around that with our smart grid programs in India. And again, in India, to what Abhay had said, and this is my second point, is policy and infrastructure both seem to be in a state where we don't have stuff that's mature enough to go to the next step in the smart grid, right? So take that as a constraint and see what can telecom do in a grid that is not mature enough to get smart right now, and what are the baby steps telecom can take ahead. So again, to what the Commodore said earlier in the morning, as entrepreneurs, this is something where you can probably really come up with something new and do well in the industry. So thank you for your time.
Okay. So from yeah.
Right. So say for example, and can I take that question now? Or in terms
I think
of time?
we'll take it later on if you don't mind.
I just want to check about time.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I think don't view telecom as just a telecom sector. As we learned from Commodore Gina, that you need to look at the whole ecosystem. So right from the government policies to how the utilities operate, what are their problems, to the telecom and the end consumer. So what are their exact needs? So you need to basically look at the entire chain and then come up with the solutions. Second thing is that again, as we learned, the technology exists today. You have all the infrastructure, all the latest things available today. What we need to do is come up with interesting ideas, innovations, and improve the more, I would say, end user or consumer engagement to this entire program, because not a single entity, whether it is utility or telecom or the manufacturer, will be able to solve problem. I think everybody will need to participate in that program, and that's where I think there is a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, so I'm going to throw open for just a few questions, and the preference will be given to the people at the back, the future who's going to pay our pensions and take care of us in our old age. So, yeah, the gentleman there, you have a question. You be very brief and ask the question. And you can, ask the question to anybody or specific person on the panel. Yeah, be brief, please, and we are running out of time.
Good afternoon, panel members. My question goes to Bimal sir. There are huge transmission and distribution losses in grids in India. Are electricity distribution companies in India, like MIC DCL, really embracing smart grid concepts?
Well, honestly, I'm not an expert on smart grids as well, so maybe
I can try.
Go ahead, yeah.
So I think
this is rerouting the question through the telecom network.
yeah. So this is definitely data that is out there on the table. We know there's a lot of transmission and distribution losses. They're split up into, as you might know, two kinds of losses: technical and commercial. And on both numbers, we are quite bad. And if you look at the way the utilities industry is in India, it is, I would also almost say, run completely by government agencies, in very few areas privatized. It is not an industry where a return on investment or making a profit is the key objective. The priorities and the constraints for operating an organization in this industry, based on how it's controlled by the government, are different. There is a political aspect also. So these are your constraints actually. How do you try to solve the technical and commercial losses in an area where the EV themselves are not really, it's not their priority. So how do you tackle that? So that's where I'll leave it.
Part of the, so I'll just add to what you're saying. A part of the answer is, who picks up the tab for this new meter, for example, right? And replacing existing dumb meters, if you will, with new meters is a big challenge for everybody. So if you take a high rise, there are about 60, 70 apartments in a couple of high rises. How do you replace all of them in a short period of time without disruption of power to that particular high rise and stuff like that? So there are lots of challenges. There's experiments going on in some cases, but I haven't seen wide scale deployment. Also, I think one other point you made was government regulation and stuff like that. This is worldwide.
In fact, if you look at places where it's not the case, where there is a profit-making venture as a utility, even there is a lot of pressure from lobbying groups, there's pressure from consumers that they don't want smart.
Yeah.
And because it's more in the interest of the utility company. But
Exactly.
how do you put that forward? What is the communication you give to your stakeholders? Allows you to choose an option. Either you put smart meters, or you put theft detection devices, or you put improved transmission performance through rerouting or through addition of more technical components. So that's why I said it's rather open. You cannot really say that in India it must be solved this way.
Yeah. Okay, one more question from the back.
I have a question to panel. Airtel has launched 4G LTE networks in 4 cities, and Reliance Jio is also planning to launch their 4G services. So what will be the actual speed for uplink and downlink in case of 4G LTE networks?
Actual speeds, I think we can talk of theoretical speeds here. So rest is what you experience. If you have a data device, you need to actually look at what is the speed you are getting. And obviously one bigger question here is voice as well on LTE. So it's a biggish topic here, but just suffice to say that the equipment which is coming here is the same as anywhere in the globe. So we probably will be getting or are getting best of best depending on the way network topology is and the way voice versus data trade-off starts to happen. So simple answer here. I think it is yet to be experienced in its full glory. But let me also say that 4G is by far efficient technology than the technologies we've ever seen. So obviously the younger generation is always more efficient than the previous one, right? You won't disagree on that one.